From 1963 to 1966, William Hartnell was Doctor Who. If you asked someone who Doctor Who was, he's who they'd reply with. The idea that anyone else could be the Doctor was completely unknown to the public, but all that was about to change. After 3 years almost weekly work, with only a few weeks a year break, Hartnell's health was going downhill rapidly. The constant work had taken its toll. Despite only being 58, in the 60s that was quite old. Hartnell was unable to perform to full capacity in his later episodes, either being written out temporarily or giving his lines to another character. This was incredibly troubling to the production team, as after all, if Doctor Who himself is not in the show, then Doctor Who the show is over. Before the filming of the third episode, Hartnell had taken ill, forcing Gerry Davis to rewrite the script so that the Doctor collapses, explaining his absence, and gave Ben, one of his companions, Hartnell's lines. A task not too difficult, as they had already planned for it, with Hartnell having a reduced role anyway, meaning that sadly, the last surviving episode of the Hartnell Era doesn't even feature him. Sadly, this illness was the last straw for Hartnell. He simply could not go on working for the show in his current state. So Gerry Davis came to the rescue again. Since the Doctor wasn't human, or never stated to be human at least, then it makes sense he can have some sort of ability, a way to renew himself, changing his face and therefore actor. The new actor was a very difficult task. I mean, why wouldn't it be? Replacing the Doctor with the wrong person could potentially have people stop watching, and then the show would be cancelled. They eventually settled on a submission from Hartnell himself, the only person in England, he said, Patrick Troughton. So anyway, enough of background for the story. What was Hartnell's final story actually like? Well, let's find out. We open the story with the launch of the Zeus 4 in 1986. Since this story was written in 1966, the moon landings hadn't happened yet, but space travel was extremely common due to the Cold War. So the idea that going to space was still common 20 years in the future was not really a bad assumption. The TARDIS lands soon after at the South Pole control base for the rocket, with the TARDIS team quickly being taken in for questioning. Since an unearthly child, the TARDIS team has changed, several times actually, going through many different individuals. The current team is the Doctor, of course, Ben Jackson and Polly Wright, both natives of 1966 who first joined him in the War Machines. The two feel like younger versions of Ian and Barbara, just not as intelligent. Ben, played by Michael Craze, acts as the strong man to do all the running about, doing most of the talking in situations due to his outgoing personality.
Hey, but that'll explain a few people. Them computers must do all the work now. Yeah, I wonder if they got to the moon yet.
Sure, don't you listen to the news?
You mean you have sent people to the moon?
Yeah, an expedition just returned.
Polly, played by Annika Wills, on the other hand, is literally just there to make the teas and coffees, but I suppose is also the compassionate side of the group, embodying Susan and Barbara in one character, just with some differences.
But that's terrible. You mean you wouldn't care about someone in pain?
There would be no need. We do not feel pain.
But we do.
Honestly, I quite like these companions. It's good to see some younger, down-to-earth people in the cast. It feels really natural. Eventually, something goes wrong for the base, as the Zeus 4 rocket is not where it should be, and has diverted course by 100 miles. This is due to the appearance of another celestial body, one very similar in appearance to Earth, just upside down. The Doctor recognises the planet, so tries to communicate this to the base's commanding officer, General Cutler, an extremely gruff and arrogant man that causes most of the problems in the story. Other than the main villain, of course, and in another universe would probably have been played by William Hartnell, since he was usually typecast in these kinds of roles until he did Doctor Who. A ship lands outside and the occupants exit unnoticed by the security team. The figures approach the sergeant, unaffected by his gunfire, and take him out. The other two come back with a welding torch and are taken out by the same figures, leaving us with this final shot. the first Cyberman to appear on screen in full. What an impact! Imagine back then the last thing you see is a metallic man, leaving you wondering what the hell you've just watched for a whole week. It's comparable to the ending of The Dead Planet, with the sink plunger lunging towards Barbara. Of course, nowadays we know that this was a Cyberman, but back then I bet all sorts of theories were flying through the papers. The Cybermen come inside and reveal themselves, quickly asserting their authority with force. And then we hear the creepy sing-song voice, and quickly establish that they are from Mondas, and have replaced their limbs with cybernetic parts, as well as their emotions.
We are called Cybermen.
Cybermen?
Yes, Cybermen. We were exactly like you once, but...
The Cybermen are a bit of a mixed bag in terms of design. The cloth masks, gloveless hands, and eye lenses that show the actors' eyes underneath make them incredibly creepy, but at the same time, the suits look terrible. You can clearly see the sellotape on the helmet of the Cyberman Krail, and the masks on the whole do not fit very well. They look incredibly cheap, which is a massive shame. To be honest, I'm quite glad that in future stories the design was completely changed, especially considering how over time televisions and cameras have evolved to be much better quality. In the course of conversation, we get given one of the most iconic lines from 60 years of Doctor Who.
You must come and live with us.
But we cannot live with you. You're different. You've got no feelings.
Feelings? I do not understand that word.
Emotions, love, pride, hate, fear. Have you no emotions, sir?
The first wave of Cybermen are quickly defeated by Ben and Cutler, who firmly takes hold of the situation as the Doctor collapses. Like I said earlier, it wasn't Hartnell who collapsed, so he isn't even in this episode. Cutler decides that the only option is to send the Z-bomb to destroy Mondas and save his son, who is in the Zeus 5 rocket. He asks for permission and is denied, but then rephrases the question.
Yes, sir. But you do give me authority to take any action necessary against the Cybermen?
Yes, of course. You must do all you can.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Right, gentlemen. Prepare to stop the countdown.
The Z-bomb is back on the cards. Only issue is the effects could be catastrophic for Earth as well. But the Doctor had a theory that Mondas would explode on its own before taking all of Earth's energy. But this isn't fast enough for Cutler, so the Z-bomb is back on the cards. He essentially takes the role of main villain for the final two parts, with the Cybermen kind of taking a back seat, only appearing sparingly to be destroyed and being mentioned. Of course, Mondas is the looming threat, but Cutler is the roadblock for Ben and Polly. With the help of Dr. Barclay, Ben breaks into the rocket silo. Unfortunately for him, however, Cutler has other plans. As the rocket counts down, we're treated to an animated episode. Unfortunately, due to the final episode being lost, it's had to be animated. Fortunately, however, the regeneration scene was saved thanks to Blue Peter. This is a huge problem for most of the Hartnell era. Since film was expensive and reruns were not a common occurrence, a significant portion of Hartnell and Troughton's episodes were lost to time. But back to the story. The rocket launch is a failure, and the Doctor comes back.
I'm here.
Doctor, are you all right?
Yes. Your plan is foiled, sir.
What's happened to you, Doctor?
Oh, I'm not sure, my dear. Comes from an outside influence. Unless this old body of mine is wearing a bit thin.
What do you mean wearing a bit thin?
Oh, don't worry, child, don't worry.
The Cybermen return, and the Doctor offers them another path. Why not stay on Earth and live peacefully? Predictably, they just want to conquer the Earth for themselves. With Hartnell now back at full strength, he commands every scene. Without Cutler in his way, he has all the power.
We owe you our lives. That man was going to have us shot.
The team tasked with removing the Z-bomb fight back against the Cybermen, discovering their weakness to radiation and exploiting it. The situation concludes with the Cybermen dead and Mondas exploding from oversaturation. But it's not over yet.
No, leave it.
William Hartnell's era is by far the most important of Doctor Who's history. If even one thing changed, we more than likely wouldn't have the show we have today. In the beginning, we had a man that was arrogant, grumpy, and, honestly, a massive prick. But after travelling with Ian and Barbara, Susan and Vicky, Dodo and Stephen, Katerina and Sarah, and of course Ben and Polly, fighting against Daleks, Zarbi, Chumbleys, and so many more, he was turned into one of the kindest doctors we've ever had. But, as I said, it's not over yet. In tomorrow's episode, we will break into the Troughton era, with his first story, The Power of the Daleks. I'll see you then.